The finale of Arcane wasn't good. I think that's a big debate among a lot of people. Is the general, like, everyone doesn't actually know if it was good. People are debating whether or not it was good. Cape Vi likers are pissing their brains out because of how hot the sex scene was, and everybody else is just kind of like, wait, some of the story has been rushed and it's kind of like shit. I won't say it's shit. I think that Victor's story is really good, and I think that Jason Victor's story, that was fucking fire. Time Bomb was pretty cool. Kate Vi needs to fucking die. I think Kate Vi had a lot of potential as a potential, like a really hard hitting ship, but there's some kind of disconnect there. I'm not exactly sure what happened with Kate Vi. Season 1 Kate Vi was probably the most the best paced thing in the entire in the show at that point. It made sense to me. I liked Kate Vi. It made sense from a lesbian standpoint because let's be honest, lesbians do tend to move quick, but not that fucking quick. So I think something happened to the writers during the second season of writing Kate Vi. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe they were pressured to give us that sex scene. Maybe it was pressure to fully flesh out their relationship and who they are together as a compatible couple. My whole thing is that it felt rushed, and it felt like it kind of disrespected the rest of the beautiful story that Arcane has to tell. Now, I know you're thinking, Ezra, we need Kate Vi. Kate Vi was a very significant part of season 1. We can't just leave them alone in season 2. Well, I agree. However, the way that they did it was very odd. Very, very odd. Making Caitlyn a dictator, number 1. Okay. I can see the conflict. I can see the potential resolution if she doesn't push it too far. Oh, wait. She's gonna push it too far. Oh, and what's this? They get back together? Act 2 was a little weird because they just got back together. Like nothing happened. She called her cupcake and then betrayed the person that she had been loyal to this entire time. I suppose you can make the argument that she was working alongside her and planning to stab her in the back later, but at the same time, there was no indication of that. No indication whatsoever. There wasn't any second thoughts. There wasn't anything going on. We didn't have any internal dialogue with Caitlyn. We didn't see that internal conflict or even outwardly conflict. And you can blame that on the pacing of the show in general, the fact that they had to squeeze everything in. And as a League lore connoisseur, I understand that the Black Rose is a very dense part of Runeterra, a very dense part of League lore in general, as it has to do with the taking over of Noxus and LeBlanc being the big mean boss she is and everything like that. And Swain as well, with his demon hand and the crows, nevermore. My whole thing is, if they were going to introduce that, and actually I'm actually quite satisfied with the way that they wrapped it up. My whole thing is that it does take away some of the attention on other things. It's all a matter of pacing. And I think because the attention went through a lot of hoops and jumps and yada yada yada, Kate Vi was kind of lost to the battlefield almost. That resulted in an awkward sex scene in a jail cell after Vi's sister just told her she's gonna go kill herself, jump off a fucking roof. But, that's a little bit whatever. My second problem with Arcane as an entire series is the constant lack of attention to Echo. Echo was an incredibly important character. He was incredibly important, and he was even featured, he's one of the main cast. However, the rest of his story kind of ends up nowhere. The first time we're introduced to Echo, he is a Firelight. Firelights fight against all the Chem Barons. They're stopping the distribution of Shimmer, the drug that is causing so much economic and social disparity in his community, and he's creating a new community, a community surrounded by the beauty of nature, somehow found in the depths of the underground. Well, where do the Firelights stand afterwards? Now, in the game, in League of Legends at least, we got the Jinx Fixes Everything minigame. And in the Jinx Fixes Everything minigame, it is explained that the Chem Barons were fighting with the Firelights. And that makes sense to me. Yeah, sure, they're fighting with the Firelights. But also, why don't we get to see that? If the Firelights are such a big and prevalent problem for the Chem Barons, and we had so much focus on the other Chem Barons, why didn't we get to see the rest of the Firelights? Now, how I would have run it, just from my standpoint, is that I would have had the Firelights free the people from prison. Echo is such an important and interesting and very, very smart, well-written character with so much potential. However, he's kind of reduced to a side character at this point who happens to stumble and save the rest of the entirety of the cast, just kind of like, not by accident entirely, but he just saves them. Now, he has had these morals. He's a very, even in the game, he's a very morally strong character. Out of nothing, he created an entire community, an entire facility, something that people can bond over. He created, somewhere where kids with no families can go. The same kids like him, with no mom, no dad, no benzo, no friends. You have to remember, Jinx was cray-cray, and Vi was locked up in jail. Echo was completely alone, and yet he managed to bring an entire community together to fight against the exact drug that was tearing his community apart. Such a powerful and wonderful, creation of a community is completely overlooked by the fact that Jinx kind of stumbles into it. I love Jinx. I love Jinx as much as the next guy. But none of her actions that she had done to, I suppose, become a hero were intentional. And I think because of that, a lot of people kind of have issues grappling with the fact that suddenly Jinx is like a revolutionary. She's not a revolutionary. She just kind of stumbled onto it. She wanted to free Isha from prison. She ended up freeing the rest of the people. People started dyeing their hair blue because she kind of showed up at a rally. My whole thing is that Jinx is what Echo should have been. He should have been the revolutionary. He should have been what Victor should have been. Well, could have been, but I actually really enjoyed the creative liberties they took with Victor's story. Because in League lore, Victor is like the revolutionary of the underground. He's like that guy. He saves people. He builds robots. He builds his own little robot body to help him out. I like the way they went with the Hex Core. I think that's a way better written story for Victor and Jace in general. I like the connotations, the impact it had on their relationship. However, with one lacking space, no revolutionary. Well, now we need a revolutionary. It's like they almost forgot they already wrote one. And but they made it Jinx. It's like Jinx is an interesting character in that aspect because I don't think she deserved what she got. I don't think she deserved to be a revolutionary. I think she deserved more in different aspects. I think she deserved to be given the opportunity to make the community better by Echo, who is actively making the community better. He should have been the person to free all those people, all those Zonites out of jail. He should have been the person to talk Jinx into becoming a revolutionary, not Savika. However, I do think Savika had like 2 lines. Sorry, I think Savika needs more character development as well. But I think that with Echo's plan and motivation, and he's got his foresight, and he's very incredibly smart, he could have at least brought Savika into that too. There's so much potential within Echo as a character, within his institution, within what he stands for, and however they just take it and throw it out in the next season. It's crazy, because I think Season 2 had so much opportunity to introduce the Firelights again. It would have been crazy if Jinx joined the fight, not by herself and Echo and Savika, but with an entire crew of Firelight people, instead of Zonites becoming enforcers to fight against the Noxians. It makes no sense. Because if I was a Zonite, I would not want to be an enforcer no matter what. Also, that wasn't really sold well. Jace was like, everybody, there's a big thing coming. How are we supposed to trust that guy? That guy is the fucking guy that killed that kid. I mean, like, from their perspective, Jace, of course, is a wonderful character who has a lot of good morals and a lot of strong, hard-hitting notes to his character, but at the same time, it's like, from a Zonite's perspective, he's just another counselor. He's just another fuck-up that has screwed their community over time and time again. So, it would have been better, and I believe, more impactful story if Echo and Jinx were the ones to actually round up the Zonites, and, if Savika was the one to... Also, Savika should have been talking more in the counselors meeting about that entire thing. They made her a counselor, but she barely talks, which is insane to me, because she's a counselor that's supposed to represent the underground. If only they made her represent the underground, I don't know. Crazy shit, am I right? But either way, You know, it should have been something like, well, we don't like you because of all the, you know, the years of suffrage that we had to endure underneath Piltover's rule, but you're right about this being a serious threat to humanity, and you know what? Let's round up the Firelights. Let's round up all these people to fight against a common cause, rather than let's make your people join your cause, joining your oppressive units of police force and brutality, and let's fight against the Noxians. I feel like a lot of what Arcane is writing is good. A lot of what the side stories are, they're good. Echo's story, great. I loved Echo. You know, and I loved the Time Bomb. Episode 7 made me cry, standing ovation. You know what I mean? It was beautiful. However, the way that they treated who he was before that. The way that they treated him before, you know, like, what they had before, all the writing they had before, the direction they took his character in before season 2. And then season 2 kind of threw it out half-assly. And then it feels kind of insensitive. It feels a little tone deaf to have a revolutionary, a genius, be sidelined by the fact that his organization is just forgotten about in the writer's room. I think that the Firelights had a lot of potential to become something else. And I think that the addition of Jinx creating her own revolution was a little bit unnecessary. If the Firelights had a hole in their leadership, Jinx and Savika should have been the ones to fill it. We don't need a new revolutionary. We have one already. Let's just keep pushing that agenda. Because it's not like the Firelights were doing anything wrong. They never killed anybody or intended to. They just blew, you know, like they blew up the supply of Shimmer. The Shimmer plants and everything else. Give me 1 second, I'm getting a call.